Welcome to the Real Lawyers Have Blogs podcast, a show for lawyers, legal professionals, law students, academics, and anybody in the legal profession that wants to look at blogging or is already blogging to build relationships and build a strong book of business. In today's podcast, we're going to take a look at really what it takes, how lawyers are consistently published, and who better to talk about this than Kevin LaCroix, who's author of the D&O Diary. I've known Kevin for a long, long time. I don't know if I went out and chased him to become part of the Lex blog because there were lawyers that really stuck out for what they were doing as bloggers. It was very a unique time back then. And he writes one of the most respected blogs on the net. It's known not only in this country, but around the world, the D&O Diary. So welcome, Kevin. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here.
If somebody asks you, what has your blog done for you? What would you say, like, over the years? What's it done for you?
Well, for starters, it's kept me working. I'm several years past the usual retirement age, but one of the main reasons I'm continuing to work is that I enjoy my blog, and I don't think I could write my blog if I wasn't in the game. So it's kept me gainfully employed, I guess, for start. But it's certainly helped deepen my professionalism. I get introduced as an expert, and I don't know whether I am an expert or not, but there's no doubt that it's deepened my expertise. And over the long haul, I think it truly has broadened and enhanced my professional career in some ways that are obvious, some ways that are subtle, but it's certainly been fulfilling. And I think that's probably the main reason it continues to be fulfilling.
How many years ago did you start?
19 and a half.
Yeah. And I started.
My mustache was black when I started.
And I started, 20 and a half.
Yeah.
What did people think of the idea of you starting the blog back then? Were they questioning your sanity? Were they wondering what you were doing? I'm just curious.
I think everyone was a little bit intrigued. It's hard to remember now, but it was still kind of a new thing back then. And I think it caught people's attention that I was, I don't know how innovative it was, but I was doing something that other people weren't doing. And right away in the narrow field that I'm in, it drew attention. And I think people definitely saw that. They saw that I was using technology to build my brand, draw attention to myself, and has continued to do that since the very beginning.
Yeah, it's funny that you say technology because they kind of threw us all in this technology world, but after everything became digital media, it's just how we published.
Yeah.
And communicated. Why the blog? What made you, said, okay, I'm think I'm going to do this thing. What triggered your thinking?
It was strictly curiosity. I had recently changed jobs, and I'm in a transaction business, and the phone wasn't ringing right away. And I've always written professionally. Back in my legal career and throughout my career, I've done professional writing. So, and I was doing that while I was trying to fill time while the transactions showed up. And I started experimenting with, I don't know if you remember, there used to be an app on Google called Blogger.
Yeah.
And I just was experimenting with it. And, before I knew it, I had a blog. I had no plan. I certainly did not know that nearly 20 years later, I would still be doing it. It was really kind of an experiment driven by curiosity that just, kind of fed itself. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, and it brought me to this point. But it's not that like I had a plan to do that. That's the way it unfolded.
And there's no way to teach us what to do either.
No.
There weren't really classes for blogging. When I started it, I was scared to death that people were going to see me because I was going to embarrass myself by using it wrong. But lo and behold, like you, people found me.
Yeah.
As a result, you really, compared to other professionals out there, you really poured your heart into this thing and your time into it. I mean, I can remember talking to you about just how much time you put in, and I think even daily, as far as how often you were writing.
Yeah, yes to both. I have poured my heart into it, and it is daily.
Yeah. So how much time did you put in? I mean,
at the beginning, a lot, because It takes a while to kind of develop the technique of identifying blog-worthy topics, and so there was a certain amount of wheel spinning where I'd get halfway into something, I realized, "Oh, that's not gonna work." But I wasn't as efficient at the beginning. On the other hand, especially at the very beginning, I enjoyed it. I was kind of stimulated and excited, so it didn't seem like extra work or anything like that. It really
Right.
was I was kinda charged up, and, that fed the amount of time that I spent too, because I was so charged up.
But you were, I mean, but you were spent, some people might do a post every week, every other week. They might put an hour into it. You were putting in significantly more time than that.
Yeah, since the beginning, I've probably averaged about 4 posts a week
Yeah.
and a lot of weeks at 5 posts. It's
I would,
actually paranoia. I mean, if you wanna know the truth, Kevin, it's paranoia. There are plenty of people in my field that have the knowledge, background, and experience to do what I'm doing. I wanted to raise it so high that they might think of doing it, but they say, "But I could never do that." So I
you're,
was
you're inspiring me again that I get off on these oddball topics on my blog as opposed to stay
Yeah,
focused. But blogging on blogging is tougher to do. I mean,
yeah,
you have a lot of topics in this area. The-
yeah.
Your career during this period of time has certainly changed the type of. I mean, it's not necessarily the type of work you're doing, but who you're doing it for. How are things changed? And I'm assuming your ability to blog, you know, has continued to be the same throughout.
It's really interesting, Kevin, and this is something I absolutely did not anticipate at the beginning, but my blog has helped me develop an international clientele. I would I don't it's been a while since I've checked, but I would say, 30-40% of my readers are from outside the United States, and they're very important, readers, and they tend to, be in a field that's just developing in their countries. What my specialty is well developed in the United States. It's just emerging in a lot of other countries. So it has really opened up this professional practice that, I didn't do it by design. I did not set out to have an international practice. It just kind of found me. And, that's another reason I'm still working is I find that very stimulating.
Yeah, I mean, I was a gentleman, a lawyer from Germany, and all of a sudden he's contacting me through LinkedIn, says he knows you, and I'm following all this same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
your reach is pretty good. What's been the I mean, there's probably been different wild occasions from blogging. Have there been any where you just said that's a wild thing that happened from blogging, or that's a crazy thing that happened from blogging?
There's a long list, I have to admit, but my favorite story, and I'll tell it to you the way I told it to my wife. I just returned from my first trip to Singapore, and I said to my wife, "You're not going to believe what happened when I was at this meeting in Singapore. This woman comes up to me and she says, 'I'm from Mauritius and I read your blog. You're world famous.'" And as I said to my wife, if someone from Mauritius tells you you're world famous, you're world famous. To
Famous.
which my wife said, "That's nice, dear. Take out the trash, please."
Fish.
You get no respect. That was unexpected. That was unexpected.
What do you think is going to be, or if you never need to think about it, the way that AI is going to affect, any of our blogging or the archiving of it, um, this body of knowledge, the library of information that's going to be, retained. Um,
An interesting question you're asking. I thought you were gonna ask me how AI was gonna affect my blogging, but instead you're asking how is my blog gonna affect AI?
yes.
I do know, having used several of the mainstream, AI tools, that, for example, if you ask a question about D&O insurance to the blog, rather to the AI tool, what you get is Kevin LaCroix. I
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
Um, now, how they went about that, how they source that, I'm not privy to that. And I do worry that, maybe I'm superseding myself somehow by replicating myself as an AI bot or something. But it is interesting to see how it's unfolded. Yeah, what that will mean for the future. I don't think I have enough vision to see over the horizon, but I think it definitely will change things. I'm just not entirely sure how.
I was looking at it over the last 3 days because I was trying to look at our library. of content and how that influenced AI. And I realized one, to start with, that people that had built influence on their own were not dealing with a world of, I mean, nobody used the term content marketing when you and I started a blog. You published, you blogged, but you built authority, so people have cited you. And whether it's trade publications or mainstream publications, I mean, your blog, I think, has been cited by, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, probably international publications as well. It's looked at as authoritative. So it's going to be there, from everything I can tell.
Yeah, and that makes me conservative a little bit. Being aware that people are going to read it, and it could affect, particularly within my industry, it could affect perception. I feel like I kind of have a responsibility to not start throwing hand grenades or anything like that, to not offend people, not say anything that's unnecessarily provocative. Which, there's some bloggers out there that's the way they do business, throwing hand grenades and provoking people. Does it make me pull my punches? I hope not, but it does make me, even if I think somebody's said or done something really stupid, I don't say this person has said or done something really stupid. I find another way to say that without making an enemy or creating unnecessary controversy.
You mean you're concerned that because if it's in some form of AI, that it might be looked at as more controversial? Maybe I'm missing your point.
No, just nothing AI related. Just within my industry, a lot of the people read it, and
Okay.
it influences. I know that it influences opinion, and I feel that I have a responsibility to be aware of that, to take that into account
Agree.
when I'm
Yeah.
writing things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the first book I picked up on the internet, I didn't know much about it. I was using AOL in the 90s, and
Think about that, a book about the internet.
internet, yeah, yeah, a book about the internet. You went to
That's
Barnes
pretty
and Noble.
funny.
You went to Barnes and Noble to find out how to use the
Yeah.
internet. Uh,
Old school, Kevin. You're old school.
yeah, when I asked the associate in the firm and I had started, he said, "How do I get access to the internet?" And he's explaining this thing, and I didn't understand the initials. And I said, "Well, how about those things you can get on the counter at Barnes and Noble?" And he goes, "Yeah, those AOL floppy disks that you put into the side of your computer. If that's right, then you get a book as to."
How many people listening know what a floppy disk is?
Yeah, and
Times change.
yeah, floppy disk. You got then you put you had a modem
Yeah.
that you plugged into the side, and
Yeah. They were
God, when
dinosaurs then too, right, Kevin?
yeah, you had to You had four people, including myself, that had access to the internet through telephone lines.
Yeah.
But we started a law firm that became known for our use of the internet that way. So who knows?
Mm.
The evolution of the content on the internet. I'm curious of your take. I have this visceral reaction to the term content marketing. I like to
Mhm.
think of lawyers writing because they have a passion, because they want to learn in the area, they want to share insight with other people in that area. And then about 90% of lawyers now are concerned with, content marketing. How do I get a certain amount of traffic across my site? And in some cases, they'll hire people to write their content for them
Yeah.
so that they get that down. I mean, what goes through your mind when you hear about I think it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I've seen I have in mind a lawyer of relatively recent acquaintance who is new to social media, but has gone in both feet, and I have to say I'm very impressed with how, immediately he's developed a following and raised his profile. But he does a lot of things that I would never do. First of all, he's posting things several times a day. Medium of choice is LinkedIn, and he's pounding away on LinkedIn several times a day, every day. And there's no doubt he's raised his profile. And looking at that, it occurs to me that there are things I could do that if I wanted to kind of replicate what he's done. I never had the time or the stomach to be all social media. It was enough just to keep my blog going.
Right.
And I did the hours in the day problem caught up with me. There was a limited amount of time I could spend to then be on Twitter and LinkedIn and so on. So I have a presence on LinkedIn and I do post on LinkedIn, but not like the lawyer I was just mentioning, who's really, trying to, kind of create a whole new persona through the means of social media.
Yeah, maybe we're older. Maybe there's there's something about this feels a little bit like publishing. Well, to me,
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
actually quite proud of this body of information that I've created.
yeah.
Hopefully, somebody will find it valuable someday.
Yeah.
So when I get to a world of LinkedIn, and sometimes I just take drives, up from Seattle and head out towards, the mountains and beyond. And I was thinking, if I just showed that this small town what LinkedIn looks like and what these lawyers and other professionals do,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they would think that these people were absolutely, absolutely crazy.
It is an alternative reality.
It,
That's for sure.
it very much is. Now, if I told them that I wrote and I maybe wrote a few chapters a day or a few chapters a week on a particular subject, I think people can relate. Uh,
One thing that makes that conversation hard, if we could turn the clock back, I would not use the word blog. I wish we had a different word.
so do I.
It's the worst word. It sounds so goofy.
Yeah,
Telling somebody, like in that small town you mentioned, if we went up to them and say,
I
"Hey,
have a
I read a
blog.
blog," it's the most propeller-headed thing. It just
What happened was somebody came up with the term web blog, that you would log your activity on the web. And Rebecca Blood come up with a book on that called the Weblog Handbook. Um, then Dave Weiner, who was the inventor of blogging, he has some other piece of software. He's calling it a blog. When I stumbled into it, what happened was it was just by chance. I was reading a magazine and I saw that there was going to be a company that was going to have 10,000 subscribers in 90 days. And that was like AOL. And I go, wow, they're going to have 10,000 paid subscribers. What is this? And it turned
yeah.
out it was a web based blog platform called Typepad. And so I subscribed to it, got a book on it at the bookstore. And then I said, well, these things would be perfect for lawyers. So I just decided to go for an alternate niche. So I put the name blog in it.
Yeah.
Today, I regret it because
Mhm.
what we're doing is publishing. And Lexblog's site will soon change to Lexblog Publishing, and
Mhm.
there'll be a library there. So that
Mhm.
it'll track it'll track books,
Mhm.
publishing. It may come from blogs, it might come from insights, articles, or other
Mhm.
things that lawyers have published. So get it outside that. Get it to come from a library.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah,
It's just
wouldn't it
such a
have?
goofy sounding word.
Yeah, it is a good. But when I started it, I thought I had a better chance because it was so goofy sounding that I
Yeah.
would have a monopoly.
Oh, that's a good
But
point.
but 20 years later, it's hurting me
Yeah.
because people do think it's a strange thing.
Yeah.
You have a good enough publication that I think people find the name blog associated with what you do
I
pretty
think a lot
good.
of people don't think about it very much. It just always feels awkward in my mouth when I
It's,
say it.
it's, it's probably true. What would you what would you tell law students or young lawyers? You said you had a son that's a young lawyer, about publishing,
Yeah,
about
my
blogging.
son is an attorney in Austin, Texas. No, I do have a lot of communication with law students, and I'm often gratified by their comments and questions. The thing I find most gratifying is from their question, I can tell they read what I'd written very closely. They could only have come up with that if they'd read it closely, which is for anyone that writes, that's a very satisfying feeling. I encourage them to follow my blog, find other blogs.
Right.
There are a lot of good ones out there on Lex blog, and there are a lot of good blogs, and I think there's a lot of good information that will help you stay current, help you develop your professional knowledge, and also help you find the things that you are interested in and might actually be drawn to professionally. So I think there's a lot there for law students in the blogosphere. And I hope my blog encourages them to look into that, not just for the topics I write about, but other blogs on other topics as well.
Would Would you encourage them to think about blogging as far as, it bringing
I w-
work in the door?
yeah, I would the same as 30 years ago. I would have encouraged them to do professional writing, and for some of the
Right.
same reasons. The advantage of the blog is it's more flexible. It's a lot easier to forward a link than to forward a document. So, and the blogging format is pretty flexible. I think it's like anything else. You have to walk before you can run, and maybe you can't start right away doing in-depth blog posts, but you can certainly do case commentaries and things like that. Law students are qualified to do that. So I would think any law student who is interested in writing or developing further knowledge in a specific area, would be drawn to that. It would be something they want to do.
I continue to see it as a missed opportunity by some law students. Sometimes in larger firms, they're not given the opportunity to make as much of a name as they would maybe could do.
I had during the pandemic, my law school was helping law students. They'd had their summer offers revoked, and so they sent out an all alumni newsletter saying, "Can you use the work of a law student?" I said, "Are you kidding?" Yeah. So they put me in touch with this really bright young woman who produced several really good blog posts. And I was really sorry that when the summer was over, because first of all, I just enjoyed working with her. But second of all, she was really bright and she came up with some good stuff. And it was stuff that I wouldn't have written about. It was stuff that was of interest to her. So that was kind of cool. Man, I wish I could replicate that experience because it was a lot of fun.
Where do you think this blogging is all going to go? You have any idea?
I get asked a variant of that question, which is sort of, would you start a blog today? If you hadn't started 30 years ago, I think, the prospective blogger today might take a slightly different approach. They might not do a traditional blog. They might do podcasts. They
Right.
might do a combination of LinkedIn, X, and so on. Lawyers are by nature kind of conservative. They get their information by reading. They like in-depth things. So it's kind of a unique audience. Just given who I am and the way I work professionally, I probably would continue to blog. Might at some point I'm going to sunset on my career, so I feel like I don't really have to answer. I'll probably be long gone before the epitaph is said for the blogging industry. But where's it going to go? I think the new blogger today will probably be sort of multimedia. More podcasts, more things like this, more use of other social media, and incorporating perhaps all of those things into their blog content.
Yeah, and the thing that, like, for LinkedIn, sometimes what I think about, I think it's really good. Now you're beholden to what it'll show certain people, but that seems to
Right.
work out okay. But where does all
Yeah.
your stuff go?
Yeah.
I'm real old timer, so I think
Yeah.
about. I always
That's true.
imagined being a lawyer that actually wrote and had books or something, but that would never
Mhm.
be me. Now have I don't know how many do you know how many blog posts you've written?
Well, I've been doing it 20 years and doing it 4 or 5 times a day. A lot. I've written a lot of blog posts.
Yeah, thousands.
I
And so
Yeah,
you imagine thousands of articles or whatever,
yeah,
putting binders on a shelf.
yeah,
And, I looked up to actually write a book. And I said, "Hey, can AI help me by organizing the blog posts that I have?" And
yeah.
I'll come up with the subjects, and it's got to come up with lines in somewhere in my
Mhm.
blog.
Yeah,
There's like 8,000 posts in there, and so you realize, okay, I'll be gone, but if I can provide some structure to this, well, have I
yeah.
left my mark
Mhm.
in the industry versus if I would have done that work at LinkedIn, would there be that mark there?
A variant of that, Kevin, that I've been experiencing recently, you know, in recognition of the fact that I'm not gonna work forever,
Right.
I did start to worry what's gonna happen to my blog posts when I'm not writing them anymore. And so I have been working towards bringing in my replacement because I don't want it to just die.
Yeah.
Even though I'm well aware that another person is gonna take it in other directions, that's fine. but it will live on. It will have a second life.
It's good. It's great. I mean, Peter
Yeah.
Marler in New York that writes the New York Business Dissolution blog. The firm has had that
Mhm.
issue because he's poured his heart and his soul into the thing, the blog and
Yeah.
the podcast, and he would like to keep it going, and so would the firm from a sheer economic standpoint
Yeah. Yeah.
to do it. Yeah, and we are. Maybe it's stupid to do, and maybe it can long term get aligned if we ever get acquired. And that's not my goal necessarily, but to be the library, to be the place. So when all that content was sitting on typepad and they gave them, I kept telling the lawyers, I said, this is a company that their model is not aligned with yours. Someday they might go
Yes.
down and just tell you, and they did, and they
Yeah.
gave them 30 days notice. But we were able to
Mm.
get 600,000 posts off of that. And
Mm.
a number of them through the people that gave us the keys to the castle, the law professors, and got it up onto sites. And then a lot of it literally just, I said, just put it in the warehouse. We have it stored, and the cost to store things are so much less today
Yeah.
than they were before. So can LaCroix build a business model around being a
Mhm.
library of secondary content for lawyers? Because I just don't think that the companies that are focused on mass distribution necessarily by email or whatever, their focus is in preservation of secondary law, large firm, small firm, whatever it is. It's great talking with you about this. I could sit and
Always good talking to you, Kevin.
about this. It's an understatement. You're very understated on what you've accomplished through your blog and where you've gotten to work and where you've gotten to travel around the world by virtue of your work. It's pretty impressive. But thank you very much.
Kevin, thank you. I've enjoyed this a great deal.
And that's it for today's episode of the Real Lawyers podcast. If you've enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe where you get your podcast and share it with another lawyer who cares about their craft and publishing as well. The Real Lawyers podcast is brought to you by LaCroix. Believe it or not, we're now the world's largest legal publishing network with over 1 million published works and 60,000 publishers, with a real purpose and building a name around preserving the law that's been published by lawyers. I'm Kevin O'Keefe. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you the next time.
Thanks, Kevin.